Commander Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ships that surrounded his small convoy. The bridge of the UHS Discovery felt cold and quiet as his crew watched the enemy vessels get closer. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. 3 days ago, everything had been perfect. Earth's first meeting with alien life was supposed to be peaceful. The Zephyrian Empire had sent a message saying they wanted to talk. Jake's mission was simple: meet the aliens, shake hands, and start friendly relations between their species. Now dozens of alien warships pointed their weapons at his 3 small Earth ships. Jake's hands shook as he gripped the command chair. How had a peaceful meeting turned into a war so quickly? Lieutenant Amy Carter stood near the science station, tears running down her face. She was only 25 years old and had dreamed of meeting aliens since she was a child. Amy specialized in studying alien life forms, and she had been so excited about this mission. Now she felt like the worst person in the galaxy. "Commander, this is all my fault," Amy said quietly. Her voice barely carried across the bridge. "I should have known better. I should have studied their customs more carefully." Jake turned to look at her. Amy was one of his best officers, smart and careful in everything she did. If she had made a mistake, it was an honest one. "Tell me exactly what happened again, Amy. Every detail." Amy took a deep breath and wiped her eyes. "The Zephyrian ambassador came aboard our ship 2 hours ago. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, with blue skin and 4 arms. He wore beautiful robes covered in silver patterns. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music." She paused, remembering the moment that changed everything. "He introduced himself as Ambassador Kethamor of the Zephyrian High Council. I was so nervous and excited. When he finished talking, I did what felt natural. I reached out my hand to shake his hand, just like we do with humans." Captain Ben Rodriguez, commander of the second ship in their convoy, appeared on the main screen. His face looked grim. "Amy, you couldn't have known. None of us knew what that gesture meant to them." Amy continued her story. "The moment I touched his hand, everything changed. The ambassador stepped back like I had hit him. His eyes went wide and he started speaking very fast in his own language. Then he switched back to English and said something I'll never forget." Jake waited for her to continue. Around the bridge, his crew listened carefully. They all needed to understand what had gone wrong. He said, "By the ancient laws of my people, you have just issued a formal challenge of combat to the death. This challenge extends to your entire species. The Zephyrian Empire accepts your declaration of war." Amy's voice broke as she repeated the alien's words. Dr. Lisa Harper, the mission's chief diplomat, shook her head in frustration. She had spent years preparing for this moment, learning everything she could about alien cultures, but there had been so little information about the Zephyrians. In their culture, physical contact between different species is only done before a fight to the death. It's like drawing a sword and pointing it at someone's heart. The alien fleet had arrived 30 minutes after their ambassador returned to his ship. Jake counted at least 40 vessels, each one larger than anything Earth had ever built. The smallest alien ship was twice the size of his flagship. The largest looked like a floating city made of metal and crystal. "Incoming transmission from the alien fleet," reported Communications Officer Danny Walsh. He was young and scared, but his hands remained steady on his controls. "The signal is strong and clear, sir." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main view screen filled with the image of another Zephyrian, this one wearing what looked like military armor. His blue skin was darker than the ambassador's, and scars covered the left side of his face. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. Your species has declared war upon the Empire through your representative's challenge. This war cannot be withdrawn or cancelled. It is now a matter of honor that must be settled through combat." Jake stood up from his command chair. He had to try to fix this situation even though he knew it was probably hopeless. "Admiral Kethvar, I am Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Discovery. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. My officer meant no challenge. In human culture, shaking hands is a sign of friendship and respect." The alien admiral's expression did not change. "Your customs are irrelevant. The challenge was issued according to Zephyrian law. Your species has declared war upon an empire that spans 300 star systems. We have never lost a war in 3,000 years of history. Dr. Harper stepped forward. Admiral, surely there must be some way to resolve this peacefully. Our species has just met for the first time. War benefits no one. The laws are clear, Admiral Kethvar replied. Once a challenge is issued, it cannot be withdrawn. To do so would bring shame upon both our species. The war will continue until one side surrenders completely or is destroyed. Jake felt his heart sink. Earth had only recently developed faster than light travel. They had a small fleet of exploration ships and a few defensive platforms around. Their home system. The idea of fighting an empire that controlled hundreds of worlds was terrifying. How long do we have? Jake asked. You have shown courage by asking this question directly, the Admiral said. I will give your species one standard galactic cycle to prepare your defenses. This is longer than required by our laws, but your species is young and deserves time to prepare for honorable combat. The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent. Jake looked around at his crew. These people had volunteered for a peaceful exploration mission. Now they were witnesses to humanity's first interstellar war. Amy Carter sat down heavily in her chair. One galactic cycle. That's about 6 Earth months. 6 months for our entire species to prepare for war against an empire we know nothing about. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system. Commander Morrison, we need to get back to Earth immediately. The government needs to know what's happened here. Jake nodded. Danny, send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we're coming home with urgent news. Ben, form up the convoy for immediate departure. As the Earth ships turned away from the alien fleet, Jake wondered if he was looking at his home system for the last time. The Zephyrians let them go without interference. They were confident enough to give humanity 6 months to prepare. That confidence worried Jake more than direct threats would have. Dr. Harper was already working at her station, analyzing everything they had learned about the Zephyrians. Jake, I'm finding some interesting things in their language patterns and behavior. They seem to follow very strict rules about everything, especially combat. What kind of rules? Jake asked. They appear to fight according to ancient codes of honor. Everything they do follows established patterns. The way they speak, the way they position their ships, even the time limit they gave us. It's all very formal and traditional. Lieutenant Carter looked up from her science station. Maybe that's something we can use. If they always follow the same patterns, maybe we can predict what they'll do. Jake felt a small spark of hope. Keep studying everything we recorded about them. When we get back to Earth, we'll need every advantage we can find. The journey home took 3 days. During that time, Jake's crew worked around the clock analyzing every second of their encounter with the Zephyrians. They had accidentally started humanity's first interstellar war, but maybe they could also find a way to win it. As Earth grew larger on the view screen, Jake knew that everything was about to change. In 6 months, the most powerful empire in the galaxy would come to destroy his species. Humanity would have to fight for its very survival against an enemy they barely understood. The peaceful exploration mission had failed completely. Now the real work would begin. 6 months had passed since the Discovery returned to Earth with news of the coming war. General Vexital stood on the command deck of his flagship, the mighty Sword of Honor, and watched the blue planet grow larger on his screens. The Zephyrian invasion fleet stretched across space like a metal constellation, hundreds of warships moving in perfect formation toward the human homeworld. General Vexital was old, even by Zephyrian standards. He had lived for over 200 years and commanded fleets in dozens of wars. His dark blue skin bore the ritual scars of a lifetime warrior, and his forearms moved with practiced grace as he reviewed the final battle plans. This war against the humans would be his easiest conquest yet. The intelligence reports about humanity, made for boring reading. These creatures had barely learned to travel between stars. Their largest warship was smaller than a Zephyrian escort vessel. They had no orbital battle stations, no planetary defense shields, and their weapons technology was centuries behind Zephyrian standards. The entire human military could fit inside one of his heavy cruisers. "General, we are approaching the outer edge of their star system," reported Captain Zekhan, his tactical officer. "Our scouts confirm that the human defensive fleet is gathering near their fourth planet. They have approximately 50 vessels of various sizes." Vextal made a sound that might have been laughter. 50 ships against his fleet of 300. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. He suspected they were simply too primitive to understand how hopeless their situation was. On Earth, President Susan Wells sat in the emergency command center beneath the capital city. The bunker had been built during the old nuclear wars, but now it served as humanity's war room against an alien invasion. The walls were covered with screens showing ship movements, resource reports, and tactical analyses. General Paul Martinez stood at the main tactical display, pointing at the approaching alien fleet. His face was grim as he explained the situation to the assembled leaders. "The Zephyrian fleet is massive. Our best estimates put their total firepower at 20 times our entire defensive capability. In a direct fight, we would last maybe 10 minutes. Admiral Karen Stone, commander of Earth's Space Forces, nodded in agreement. "Our ships are fast and maneuverable, but they're not built for this kind of battle. The Zephyrians have weapons that can destroy our largest ships with a single shot." President Wells looked around the room at her military advisors. These were Earth's best and brightest, people who had spent their lives preparing for war. Now they faced an enemy unlike anything they had ever imagined. "What are our options, General Martinez?" Martinez pulled up a new display showing scattered ship positions throughout the solar system. "We can't win a traditional fleet battle, so we won't fight one. Admiral Stone has developed a plan that might give us a chance. Instead of meeting them head-on, we'll spread our forces out and hit them from multiple directions." Admiral Stone stepped forward to explain her strategy. "The Zephyrians expect us to gather our fleet and meet them in honorable combat. Instead, we'll hide our ships throughout the solar system. When they attack Earth, we'll strike at their supply lines and support vessels." Dr. Helen Brooks, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, had been studying the Zephyrian ships captured during several small encounters over the past months. She looked tired but excited as she presented her findings. "I've discovered something important about their technology. Everything they build is designed for efficiency and beauty, not durability." She brought up technical diagrams on the main screen. "Look at these weapon systems. They're incredibly powerful, but they have no backup systems. If you damage the primary power coupling, the entire weapon array goes offline. Their ships are like works of art, beautiful but fragile." Lieutenant Colonel Rick Davis listened to the briefing with growing interest. He commanded Earth's first squadron of space fighters, small ships designed for speed and stealth rather than heavy combat. "Dr. Brooks, are you saying their ships have weak points we can exploit?" "Exactly," Brooks replied. "The Zephyrians have been the dominant military power for so long that they've never needed to build ships that can take serious damage. They're used to winning battles quickly and cleanly." Back on the Sword of Honor, General Vextal reviewed the human defensive positions with mild curiosity. The enemy ships were scattered across their star system in what appeared to be a random pattern. Some were hidden behind moons, others were positioned near asteroid fields, and a few were actually moving away from Earth rather than defending. "It's strange," Vextal muttered to himself. "Their formation makes no tactical sense. Are they planning to surrender?" Captain Zekhan studied the human positions on his tactical display. "General, their deployment pattern is unlike anything in our military databases. It appears chaotic and undisciplined. Primitive species often lack proper military organization," Vextal replied. "We will crush them quickly and end this war with minimal losses to our own forces." The Zephyrian fleet moved into Earth's solar system like a perfectly choreographed dance. Each ship held its assigned position, maintaining formation even as they navigated around planets and asteroid belts. Their movements were graceful and precise, following battle tactics that had been refined over thousands of years. On Earth, millions of people watched the sky and waited. The news broadcast showed the approaching alien fleet as tiny dots of light moving against the stars. Most humans had never seen a real space battle, and they didn't know what to expect. In the command bunker, President Wells received regular updates from Admiral Stone. The human fleet was in position, waiting for the right moment to strike. "How long until they reach Earth?" she asked. 6 hours, Stone replied. "They're moving slowly, probably to maintain their formation." The Zephyrians seemed to value discipline and order above speed. General Martinez watched the enemy fleet approach, with a mixture of fear and determination. "That might work in our favor. If they're predictable, we can plan around their movements." Lieutenant Colonel Davis was already in space, leading his fighter squadron from a hidden position behind Earth's moon. His ship was small enough to avoid detection by the Zephyrian sensors, and he had a perfect view of the approaching enemy fleet. "Command, this is Davis. I can see the alien ships clearly now. They're huge, but they're flying in straight lines, like they're in a parade." Admiral Stone's voice came through the communication system. "Acknowledged, Davis. Remember, your job is to hit their support vessels, not their main battleships. Strike fast and get out before they can respond." Davis studied the alien formation through his ship's sensors. The Zephyrians had arranged their fleet with the largest ships in the center and smaller vessels protecting the flanks. It was a classic battle formation that would work perfectly against another traditional fleet. Against Earth's scattered forces, it might be a weakness. Dr. Brooks had been right about Zephyrian technology. Davis could see that their ships were works of art, with flowing lines and crystalline structures that caught the light of the sun. They were beautiful, but they also looked delicate compared to the rough, practical design of human vessels. Captain Tony Clark commanded a stealth ship hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. His vessel was painted black and equipped with the latest sensor-dampening technology. The Zephyrians had passed within a few thousand kilometers of his position without detecting him. "This is Clark," he reported quietly. "The alien supply convoy is approaching my position. I count 12 transport vessels and 4 escort ships. They're not even scanning for threats." Admiral Stone's response was immediate. "Wait for my signal, Clark. We need to coordinate all our attacks at the same time." The Zephyrian fleet continued its stately approach toward Earth. General Vextal was pleased with the progress of the invasion. Everything was going according to plan, and the humans had made no attempt to interfere with his advance. Perhaps they would surrender without a fight, saving both sides the trouble of actual combat. In just a few hours, he would demand the humans' unconditional surrender. If they refused, he would demonstrate the power of Zephyrian weapons by destroying a few of their cities. After that, they would surely see reason and submit to the Empire's rule. The general had no idea that dozens of human ships were already in position around his fleet, waiting like hunters for the perfect moment to strike. The war was about to begin, and neither side truly understood what they were facing. The first battle of the war began at exactly 800 Earth time, but it was nothing like General Vextal had expected. The Zephyrian fleet approached Earth in perfect formation, ready to demand the humans' surrender. Instead of meeting them with honor, the humans struck like wild animals. Captain Steve Adams watched the massive Zephyrian cruiser thunder of victory through his destroyer's viewport. His ship, the Defiant, was tiny compared to the alien vessel, but Adams had a plan that would have horrified any civilized military officer. He was going to ram his ship directly into the enemy's bridge. "Captain, are you sure about this?" asked his first officer, Lieutenant Mark Brown. The young man's face was pale as he stared at the approaching alien ship. "We could try to fight them with our weapons first." Adams shook his head. "Our missiles would barely scratch their hull and they'd destroy us in seconds. This is the only way to take out something that big." He turned to address his crew over the ship's communication system. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. Everyone get to the escape pods. You have 2 minutes." The crew of the Defiant moved quickly to abandon ship. They had practiced this maneuver dozens of times over the past 6 months, but doing it for real was terrifying. As the last escape pod launched, Adams sat alone on his bridge, guiding his ship toward the alien cruiser. On the thunder of victory, Captain Hector watched the small human ship approach with confusion. The vessel was accelerating directly toward his ship, but it wasn't firing weapons. "What is that primitive doing?" he asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, Captain. The human ship appears to be on a collision course, but surely they will turn away at the last moment. No civilized species would sacrifice their own vessel in such a manner. Captain Hector had fought in 23 battles during his long career, but he had never seen anything like this. The human ship was tiny, barely larger than his shuttlecraft, but it was moving at incredible speed. Raise shields and prepare to fire. If they wish to die, we will accommodate them. The Defiant struck the thunder of Victory's bridge section at nearly half the speed of light. The impact destroyed both ships instantly, but the explosion also damaged two nearby Zephyrian vessels. Captain Adams died in the collision, but his sacrifice eliminated one of the enemy's most powerful ships and shocked the entire alien fleet. General Vextal watched the destruction from his flagship with complete bewilderment. What just happened? Did that human ship malfunction? Negative, General, his tactical officer replied. Our sensors show that the human vessel deliberately rammed our cruiser. The collision was intentional. Vextal had never heard of such a thing. In 3,000 years of Zephyrian military history, no enemy had ever used suicide attacks. The concept was so alien to their way of thinking that they had no protocols for dealing with it. Madness, he whispered. They are all mad. The ramming attack was only the beginning. Throughout the solar system, human forces struck at Zephyrian ships using tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Near Jupiter, Colonel Nancy Foster led a ground assault on a Zephyrian landing force that had occupied one of the moons. The Zephyrian soldiers were tall, elegant warriors who fought with precision and honor. They advanced across the moon's surface, in perfect formation, carrying weapons that could cut through metal and energy shields that protected them from most attacks. Colonel Foster's troops were waiting for them in hidden positions among the rocky terrain. Remember, these aliens fight like they're in a parade, Foster told her soldiers over the radio. They expect us to line up and fight them fairly. We're not going to do that. The battle began when the Zephyrians were halfway across an open area. Foster's troops opened fire from concealed positions, using modified mining explosives and improvised weapons. The aliens tried to respond with their traditional tactics, but they couldn't target enemies they couldn't see. Major Kevin Nash, Foster's second-in-command, led a team that crawled through underground tunnels to attack the Zephyrian command post from behind. The aliens had established their headquarters in a defensive position that could repel any frontal assault, but they hadn't considered the possibility of an underground attack. Nash's team emerged from the tunnels directly beneath the enemy command post. Instead of engaging in honorable combat, they planted explosives and retreated. The explosion destroyed the Zephyrian communications equipment and left their ground forces without coordination. The alien soldiers were brave and skilled, but they had no experience fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Colonel Foster's troops used booby traps, ambush tactics, and psychological warfare that left the Zephyrians confused and demoralized. Within 6 hours, the entire Zephyrian ground force had surrendered. Back in space, Commander Tony Clark was leading a stealth mission behind enemy lines. His ship, the Shadow, was barely visible to Zephyrian sensors as it approached a supply convoy. The aliens had arranged their transport ships in a protective formation, but they weren't expecting an attack from someone who had no intention of fighting fairly. Clark's team didn't try to engage the convoy's escort ships. Instead, they targeted the supply vessel's engines and life support systems. The Zephyrian escorts were designed to fight other warships, not to defend against sabotage attacks on helpless cargo ships. Target their oxygen recycling systems, Clark ordered his weapons officer. Don't destroy the ships, just make them uninhabitable. The attack lasted only minutes, but it disabled the entire supply convoy. The Zephyrian escort ships tried to respond, but Clark's vessel had already disappeared into the darkness of space. The alien crews were left stranded with ships that couldn't support life, forcing them to abandon their positions. Dr. Kevin Walsh, working in a secret Earth facility, was studying captured Zephyrian soldiers to understand their psychology. What he discovered disturbed him greatly. The aliens weren't evil or cruel. They were simply unable to comprehend human tactics. They keep asking me why we fight the way we do, Walsh reported to his superiors. One of them said that human warfare seems like organized chaos. They can't understand why we don't follow proper military protocols. The Zephyrian prisoners were genuinely frightened by human behavior. They called humans the nightmare species because human warfare followed no logical pattern they could understand. The aliens had evolved as apex predators on their homeworld, never needing to develop the desperate creativity that came from being a prey species. Admiral Karen Stone watched the battle reports with growing amazement. Human forces were winning engagements they should have lost, using tactics that worked precisely because they were so unexpected. The Zephyrians are better warriors than us, she told General Martinez, but we're better at war. The difference was becoming clear. Zephyrian military doctrine was based on honor, tradition, and established rules of engagement. Human military thinking was based on survival, adaptation, and winning by any means necessary. The two approaches were completely incompatible. Lieutenant Colonel Rick Davis demonstrated this difference when his fighter squadron encountered a Zephyrian patrol near Mars. The alien ships flew in perfect formation, following tactical patterns that had been successful for thousands of years. Davis's pilots scattered in all directions, using the chaos of the asteroid belt to hide their movements. The Zephyrian patrol leader tried to engage Davis's fighters in traditional combat, but the human pilots refused to cooperate. They struck from unexpected angles, used the asteroids as cover, and coordinated their attacks in ways that seemed random but were actually carefully planned. "They fight like pirates," the Zephyrian pilot reported to his commanders. "No honor, no discipline, no respect for proper combat procedures." What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had been fighting pirates, rebels, and guerrilla forces for thousands of years. Irregular warfare was as natural to humans as breathing, but it was completely foreign to a species that had always fought according to strict codes of honor. The first major engagement of the war lasted 3 days, and when it ended, the Zephyrian fleet was in full retreat. They had lost over 50 ships to an enemy that should have been defeated in hours. General Vextal found himself facing a crisis unlike anything in his long military career. The humans had revealed their true nature, and it terrified him. 2 years had passed since the first battle, and the war had become a nightmare for the Zephyrian Empire. What should have been a quick conquest had turned into a grinding conflict that was tearing apart their perfect military machine. General Vextal stood in his private quarters aboard the Sword of Honor, staring at casualty reports that made no sense. The numbers were impossible to believe. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, rulers of 300 star systems, was losing a war against a single planet. In 24 months of fighting, they had lost over 400 ships to an enemy that started the war with only 50 vessels. Worse, the humans seemed to be getting stronger while the Zephyrians grew weaker. Major Kate Williams crouched in the ventilation shaft of the Zephyrian command ship Eternal Glory, listening to alien voices through the metal walls. Her mission was insane, even by human standards. She was leading a 12-person team to capture 3 enemy command ships using nothing but portable cutting tools and improvised weapons. The plan had come from Admiral Stone herself. Instead of trying to destroy the massive Zephyrian vessels, human forces would board them and take control from the inside. The aliens had never faced boarding parties before, and their ships weren't designed to repel internal attacks. "Team 2 is in position near the engine room," whispered Sergeant Mike Johnson through Kate's earpiece. "These aliens don't even lock their internal doors. It's like they've never heard of security." Kate smiled in the darkness. The Zephyrians were so used to fighting honorable battles between ships that they had never considered the possibility of enemies sneaking aboard their vessels. "Team 3, what's your status?" "We're at the bridge level," reported Corporal Lisa Reed. "I can see the command crew through a maintenance hatch. There are 6 aliens at control stations, but no guards. They're not expecting trouble from inside." Their own ship. The attack began at exactly midnight, ship time. Kate's team cut through bulkheads and emerged directly onto the Eternal Glory's bridge. The Zephyrian crew turned in shock as armed humans appeared in their most secure area. The aliens reached for their weapons, but the humans had already taken control of the ship's critical systems. Captain Yexmore, commander of the Eternal Glory, stared at the human soldiers with complete bewilderment. How did you get aboard my ship? This is impossible. Our sensors show no breach in the hull. Kate held up her portable cutting torch. We made our own doors. Your ship has a lot of empty space between the walls. We've been crawling around inside your vessel for 6 hours. The concept of enemies infiltrating a ship from within was so foreign to Zephyrian thinking that they had no procedures for dealing with it. Their military training focused on ship-to-ship combat, not internal security. Within 30 minutes, Kate's teams had captured all 3 command ships without firing a shot. General Paul Martinez now commanded Earth's expanded fleet from his new flagship, the Retribution. The human military had grown enormously during the HFY War, using captured Zephyrian technology to build ships that combined alien firepower with human tactics. Martinez was planning the largest operation of the war, something he called Wildfire. The Zephyrians control hundreds of star systems, he explained to his staff officers, but they can't defend all of them at once. We're going to attack 50 different targets simultaneously, forcing them to spread their forces thin. Admiral Stone nodded in agreement. Our captured ships give us the range to strike deep into their territory. They'll never expect attacks, so far from Earth. The wildfire operation began 3 days later. Human strike forces, many using captured Zephyrian vessels, appeared in star systems across the Empire. Instead of trying to conquer territory, they hit supply depots, communication relays, and isolated outposts before disappearing again. Captain Ryan Moore commanded the destroyer Vengeance on a mission to the Zephyrian system of Kethdan. His target was a massive battleship called the Pride of the Empire, one of the largest vessels in the alien fleet. Moore's ship was tiny compared to the enemy battleship, but he had studied Zephyrian ship design and found a weakness. Their power systems are centralized, Moore explained to his crew. If we can overload their main reactor, the entire ship will lose power. The problem is getting close enough to plant the charges. The Pride of the Empire was stationed near a gas giant, using the planet's gravity to maintain its position. Moore approached from the planet's shadow, using the massive world to hide his ship from the battleship's sensors. The Zephyrians never imagined that someone would use a planet as cover for a sneak attack. Moore's ship attached itself to the underside of the Pride of the Empire, like a parasite. The human destroyer was so small compared to the battleship that the alien sensors couldn't detect it among the background radiation from the gas giant. Lieutenant Sarah Adams, sister of the hero Steve Adams, led the boarding party onto the alien vessel. Her team moved through maintenance tunnels and service corridors, avoiding the main passages where they might be detected. The Zephyrians had built their ship for beauty and efficiency, not security. The reactor room is just ahead, Sarah whispered to her team. Remember, we're not here to fight. Plant the charges and get out before they know we're here. The operation took only 20 minutes. Sarah's team attached explosive devices to the battleship's main power couplings and retreated to their ship. When the charges detonated, the Pride of the Empire lost all power and began falling toward the gas giant. The crew was forced to abandon ship, leaving one of their most powerful vessels to be destroyed by the planet's gravity. Dr. Helen Brooks had become Earth's leading expert on Zephyrian psychology, studying captured officers to understand how their minds worked. Her research revealed why humanity was so effective against them. They think like chess players, she reported to the military leadership. Every move follows logical rules, and they expect their opponents to do the same. The Zephyrians couldn't adapt to human tactics because adaptation itself was foreign to their culture. They had been the dominant species for so long that they had never needed to change their methods. When their traditional approaches failed, they simply tried the same tactics harder instead of developing new ones. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Clark, now promoted to colonel, was leading raids deep in Zephyrian territory. His stealth ships struck at targets hundreds of light years from Earth, causing panic throughout the Empire. The aliens couldn't understand how humans were appearing in their most secure systems. We're not trying to hold territory, Clark explained to his pilots. We hit them, cause as much damage as possible and disappear before they can respond. It's like being bitten by invisible snakes. The psychological effect of these raids was enormous. Zephyrian civilians began to fear that humans could appear anywhere at any time. Some planets requested military protection, forcing the Empire to spread its forces even thinner. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Kethvar met with the High Council to discuss the war situation. The proud military leader looked defeated as he presented his report. The humans fight like no species we have ever encountered. They ignore all rules of civilized warfare and use tactics that seem designed to cause maximum confusion. Council. Leader Zethan studied the casualty reports with growing alarm. How can a single planet be defeating our entire empire? We have ships, weapons, and soldiers beyond counting. Numbers mean nothing if we cannot use them effectively, Kethvar replied. The humans scatter our forces across hundreds of systems, then strike where we are weakest. When we concentrate our fleet to attack them, they disappear. When we spread out to defend our territory, they attack our strongest positions. The Zephyrian military machine was designed to fight large, conventional battles between organized fleets. Human warfare was chaotic, unpredictable, and seemingly random. The aliens couldn't develop effective countermeasures because they couldn't understand the logic behind human tactics. Back on Earth, President Susan Wells addressed the nation with news of their growing success. 2 years ago, we faced impossible odds against an enemy that controlled hundreds of worlds. Today, that same enemy is retreating from star systems they have held for centuries. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something important. They might not be the strongest species in the galaxy, but they were certainly the most dangerous when their survival was at stake. The Zephyrian Empire was learning this lesson the hard way. The war ended not with a final battle, but with a conversation on a small space station in neutral territory. Ambassador Lisa Harper sat across from Admiral Kethvar in a simple meeting room, watching the once proud Zephyrian leader struggle with words that would have been impossible 3 years ago. Kethvar looked nothing like the confident military commander who had first declared war on humanity. His blue skin had faded to a pale gray, and his 4 arms trembled slightly as he spoke. The rigid posture of a lifetime warrior had been replaced by the slumped shoulders of someone who had seen his entire worldview destroyed. I do not understand your species, Kethvar said quietly. In 3 years of war, you have done things that make no sense to us. You sacrifice your own ships to destroy ours. You attack from inside our vessels. You strike at targets that have no military value. How can we make peace with people we cannot understand? Lisa had spent the last year learning to communicate with the Zephyrians, not just in their language but in their way of thinking. She had come to realize that the war had been as traumatic for them as it had been for humanity, but for completely different reasons. Admiral, we fight the way we do because we have to, she explained. When you declared war on us, you gave us only 2 choices, win or die. We chose to win, using whatever methods worked. The peace negotiations had begun 6 months earlier, after a series of events that shocked both species. The Zephyrian Empire, despite its vast size and military strength, was collapsing from within. Human raids had disrupted their supply lines, destroyed their communication networks, and created panic among their civilian populations. General Rick Davis, formerly a lieutenant colonel, now commanded the Joint Human-Alien Task Force that was hunting down the remaining Zephyrian military units that refused to surrender. Many alien commanders had gone rogue, unable to accept defeat by a species they considered primitive. Davis sat in his command ship, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Colonel Morrison, what's the status of the Kethrim system, Colonel? Jake Morrison, the former commander of the Discovery, looked up from his tactical display. The local Zephyrian garrison surrendered this morning. They're requesting safe passage to the neutral zone. The transformation of both species during the war had been remarkable. Humans had gone from a single-planet civilization to a galactic power in just 3 years. The Zephyrians had gone from masters of the galaxy to refugees in their own empire. Dr. Kevin Walsh continued his psychological studies of the Zephyrians, but now his work focused on helping them understand what had happened to them. In his secure facility on Earth, he interviewed high-ranking Zephyrian officers who had been captured during the final phase of the war. They keep asking me why we won. Walsh reported to President Wells. The concept of adaptation is foreign to their thinking. They believe that military tactics are like natural laws, unchangeable and eternal. Commander Vextal, the former general who had led the original invasion, was one of Walsh's most important subjects. The old warrior had been broken by the war, unable to comprehend how his perfect military machine had been defeated by what he still called organized chaos. "Your warriors have no honor," Vextal said during one of their sessions. "They fight, like wild animals, using any method to achieve victory. How can such creatures create a stable civilization?" Walsh tried to explain the human concept of pragmatism, but the Zephyrian couldn't grasp it. "We fight to survive, General. Honor is a luxury we can't afford when our species is threatened with extinction." The peace treaty was signed on a neutral space station called Haven, built jointly by both species during the final months of the war. President Susan Wells represented humanity, while High Counselor Zeth Han spoke for what remained of the Zephyrian government. "This agreement ends the state of war between our species," Wells announced to the assembled delegates. "But more importantly, it begins a new relationship based on mutual understanding and cooperation." The terms of the treaty surprised everyone. Instead of demanding surrender and reparations, humanity offered an alliance. Earth would share its defensive technologies with the Zephyrians, and in return, the aliens would provide access to their advanced star charts and scientific knowledge. Admiral Karen Stone, now in charge of the Joint Exploration Fleet, explained the logic behind the generous terms. "The Zephyrians aren't evil. They're just different from us. They fight according to rules we don't understand, and we fight in ways that terrify them. But both species have something the other needs." The first joint human-Zephyrian exploration mission launched 6 months after the peace treaty was signed. Admiral Morrison commanded the expedition from the bridge of the UHS Harmony, a ship that combined human tactical systems with Zephyrian engineering. Standing beside him was Captain Heckmar, a young Zephyrian officer who had volunteered for the joint mission. The alien was trying to understand human military thinking, while Morrison was learning about Zephyrian culture and traditions. "Admiral Morrison," Heckmar said carefully, "I have studied your military history, and I am confused by something. Your species has fought wars against itself for thousands of years. How do you maintain unity when you are naturally violent?" Morrison smiled at the question. "We're not naturally violent, Captain. We're naturally competitive. We fight when we have to, but we prefer to solve problems through cooperation. The war with your people taught us that conflict should always be the last option." Dr. Helen Brooks had established a new research institute dedicated to studying the differences between human and Zephyrian psychology. Her work was helping both species understand each other better and avoid future conflicts. "The Zephyrians evolved as apex predators," she explained to a gathering of scientists from both species. "They never needed to develop the kind of creative problem-solving that humans use. We evolved as persistence hunters, always looking for new ways to achieve our goals." The cultural exchange program had produced surprising results. Young Zephyrians were fascinated by human concepts like improvisation and adaptation, while human students were impressed by Zephyrian discipline and long-term thinking. Lieutenant Sarah Adams, now a captain, commanded one of the new joint cruise ships. Half her crew was human, half Zephyrian. The mixed crews had been skeptical at first, but they were learning to work together effectively. "The Zephyrians are excellent at following complex procedures," Adams reported to Admiral Stone. "Our human crew members are better at handling unexpected situations. Together we're more capable than either species would be alone." The galaxy was changing because of the war. Other alien species had watched the conflict with great interest, and many were now seeking contact with both humans and Zephyrians. The war had demonstrated that military superiority didn't guarantee victory, and that new ideas could defeat old traditions. Colonel Tony Clark, now in charge of the Joint Intelligence Service, was investigating reports of other species that might pose threats to both humans and Zephyrians. "The galaxy is bigger than we thought," he told his mixed staff of human and alien officers. "There are species out there that make the Zephyrians look like peaceful neighbors." As the Joint Exploration Fleet prepared to venture into unexplored, Regions of space. Both species had learned valuable lessons from their war. The Zephyrians had discovered that change was possible, even necessary. Humans had learned that their way of thinking, while effective, was not the only valid approach to solving problems. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Harmony, watching the stars ahead. Beside him, Captain Heckamar was studying the same view. Both officers knew that they were about to face challenges that would require the best qualities of both species. "Are you ready for whatever we might find out there?" Morrison asked his alien colleague. Heckamar considered the question carefully. 3 years ago, I would have said that we were ready for anything because we had never been defeated. Now I know that being ready means being willing to learn and adapt. In that sense, yes, I believe we are ready. The war that had begun with a simple handshake had ended with two species learning to work together. The galaxy would never be the same, and both humans and Zephyrians were stronger for having fought and survived their first interstellar conflict.